All right, I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, September 14th, 2021, public hearing on the budget at 6:30 p.m., or actually 6:35 p.m. All right, so good evening and welcome to the second of the two public hearings for the 2021-22 budget. We are here tonight to review the proposed property tax rates and budget for the 2021-22 school year, hear comments from the public, and approve the proposed millage rates and budget. The order of business and action taken tonight must follow a specific directions set forth in state statutes, and we ask for your cooperation as we go through this legally required format. Excuse me, could you go outside and talk on the phone, please? Or tone it down? There we go. There will be two opportunities for you to speak this evening. First, you may comment on the proposed millage rates. Second, you may comment on the proposed budget. If you wish to speak, you must register separately for each part of the hearing with our staff members at the entrance of the administration building. On behalf of the school board and superintendent, I thank each of you for taking the time to be here tonight to share your views with us. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. All righty, it passes unanimously. Dr. Grego and staff will make some introductory comments prior to the presentation. And before we hear from the public comments, this will happen. So, Dr. Grego?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and to the board. As said several times this evening, that our strategic plan that you passed a little bit earlier is tied to this budget, and I'm very proud of this budget, and especially during these challenging times. I want to thank Mr. Smith and his entire team for establishing this budget. If you remember, board members, he put together, Mr. Smith and the entire division put together a very comprehensive, where every dollar spent, booklet for this board to go over. Spent a lot of time with any individual board members who chose to dive a little bit deeper. And then we had our first budget workshop on, I believe it was June 22nd also, and then followed up in July with the first public hearing. So here we are in September. So Mr. Smith, thank you for your leadership, your entire team, not only those here tonight that really contribute to this. So, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Grego, Madam Chair, school board members. Appreciate your interest in the budget, and I appreciate that you participated in that comprehensive workshop back in June. As Mrs. Cook mentioned, this is the second and final public hearing on the budget and setting the millage rates. The format is set forth in Florida Statute Section 200. First, we have to talk about the millage rates, and then finally the budget. The material available at the first public hearing in July provided comparative information relative to the projected fiscal year closeout. The 2021 fiscal year has been closed out, and the actual results are reflected in the document provided to you tonight. At this time, Ms. Luann Jordan, Manager of Budget, FTE, and Cost Reporting, will present first the millage, followed by the budget. Ms. Jordan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith, and good evening, Dr. Grego, Madam Chair, board members, and staff. Truth in millage, also referred to as TRIM, requires school districts to advertise their proposed budget and millage rates annually. The district's 2021-22 millage is comprised of the general operating millage, which includes the RLE, discretionary, and local referendum. The Florida Department of Education determines the maximum state required local effort millage rate that must be levied by the school board to generate its local share of funding for the district. The local referendum of 0.5 mils was initially approved by the voters in 2005, 2006, and was approved for the fifth time in 2020-21 for a 4-year period. The proposed millage also includes the 1.5 mils for capital outlay. A mill refers to the rate of property tax commonly paid on the assessed value of homes and business properties. A mill equates to $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of taxable property value. The rolled back rate is the millage rate that would generate the same amount of revenue as last year if applied to the current tax roll after adjusting for new construction. The 2021-22 proposed millage of 6.325 is higher than the rolled back rate by 4.08%. Pinellas County's gross property tax value of approximately $106 billion is an increase from last year's value by $6.6 billion or 6.7%. The proposed millage rate for 2021-22 of 6.325 represents an overall decrease of 1.59% when compared to the 2020-21 total millage rate of 6.427. The required local effort millage has decreased by 2.77%. The property tax revenue comparison reflects an increase in revenue of $30.6 million over last year's proceeds. This is the result of the increase in property tax value. The required local effort proceeds are increasing by about $13.1 million. The proposed discretionary millage will generate about $4.8 million more. The referendum will yield an additional $3.2 million more, and the capital outlay millage will generate $9.6 million more than last year. Under the proposed rate, the owner of a $200,000 home, after the deduction of the $25,000 homestead exemption, would pay $1,106.88. This averages out to $3.03 per day. The taxable value of property in Pinellas County reflects an increase on average of 6.7% for the year. The Florida legislature has set our required local effort to 3.577, which is a decrease from the prior year's RLE of 3.679. As a result, some homeowners may experience an increase in their school taxes, as demonstrated here, as a result of the increase in property value and not an increase to our levied millage rate. The RLE is an appropriated amount set by the FLDOE. The school board must levy this amount in order to receive state funding. It's used for the day-to-day operations such as school staff and utilities. The discretionary millage is used for general operations of the district and to meet additional costs due to inflation. Local referendum funds are used to recruit and retain quality teachers, preserve reading, art, and music programs, and provide up-to-date textbooks and technology. The capital outlay millage is the district's primary funding source for maintenance, renovations, new construction, and equipment, as advertised on July 25th. At this time, I'll turn the meeting back to the board chair to allow for public comment and for the motions necessary to adopt the millage rate.
Good, thank you. Mrs. Hauk, are there members of the audience that would like to address this item?
Madam Chair, we have two speakers for the agenda items.
Okay.
We have Mark Clutho and Ashley Green.
Okay, good, thank you. Good evening.
Mark Lutho, Largo. Well, yeah, the amount people are actually paying is going up. And it just is a shame that taxpayers' money gets wasted, especially when it goes to the capital outlay. You know, as I explained earlier, the cause and effect. Cause and effect. What do you get? And, you know, isn't it backwards that you're talking about millage before the budget? Shouldn't your budget come first? You know? It shows what kind of morons you have up in Tallahassee, that they can't get the hearings in the right order.
Good, thank you. And the next speaker, okay. Good evening.
Hi, thank you all so much for having me tonight. My name is Ashley Green, and I want to speak on behalf of actually keeping the millage rate as is. Right now, we know that while property values have continued to go up, the risk of the market crashing at any time is there and is going to take one of your key sources of income to make the school system run. We just frankly don't know what the next few years has to see financially. And in an area like Pinellas County, which is constantly under the threat of environmental disaster and catastrophe, what kind of resiliency plans we'll need in order to have our schools be prepared for the next decade, for the next 2 decades. And so if we have an opportunity now where the school board can continue to take in money at the current millage rate that can be used to help build out better resiliency, provide for wage increases for school employees, then it seems to me like an opportunity for us to get our financial house in clearer order rather than to roll back the millage rate and have, well, I know more money coming in, significantly less than what could be at the millage rate that the base in Pinellas is already set at. And so I would like to ask that we consider keeping the millage rate as is and using that to improve upon both the resiliency of our schools and the wages for workers in our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? That's it?
There are no other speakers.
All right. We will entertain a motion to approve the discretionary local effort millage. Mr. Dudley?
I move that the board approve the levying and discretionary local effort millage of 0.748 mills as part of the total millage to be certified to the property appraiser and Florida Department of Revenue.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Long. Now, Mr. Smith, would you like to, now that we have this on the floor, would you like to address the comment that was made by one of the speakers?
Yes, I would. Ms. Green, I greatly appreciate your comments. However, this board has only one option, that's to adopt the millage that's proposed by the legislature within the FEFP at its rate that's prescribed or lower. They can't raise the rate. So in this case, if they kept the rate at the current or prior year's rate, they'd be in effect raising the rate, and they're not permitted to do that. So we have to adopt the rate
Right.
that's proposed.
Yeah, so by law, we have to adopt the rollback rate.
We have to, it's not necessarily the rollback rate, but it's the rate that's proposed within the FEFP.
Okay.
And it's, you have no option to raise that rate. However, you can lower that rate if you so choose to do.
Okay.
I recommend against that, of course.
Right, right. Yeah, we don't want to lower it. Okay, any other discussion? No? All righty. So we have a motion and made by Mr. Dudley, second by Mrs. Long, to approve the levying of the discretionary local effort millage of 0.748 mils as part of the total millage to be certified to the property appraiser and Florida Department of Revenue. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. And it passes unanimously. Okay, now we have a motion to adopt the total millage rates. Mrs. Kane.
I move that the board adopt a millage rate of 6.325 mils to be set and certified to the property appraiser and the Florida Department of Revenue. The millage rates are as follows. For required local effort, 3.577 mils. For discretionary local effort, 0.748 mils. For local referendum, 0.500 mils. For capital outlay, 1.500 mils. Total millage, 6.325 mils. This rate is 4.08% higher than the rolled back rate.
Okay, good, thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Dudley, thank you. We have a second. Okay, any discussion? All right. So we have a motion and a second for the board to adopt the millage rate of 6.325 mils to be set and certified to the property appraiser and to the Florida Department of Revenue. And those numbers and all are as Mrs. Kane read. I'm not going to go through them again. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to the presentation of the next portion of the budget.
Thank you. This portion of the presentation covers the district's proposed budget for 2021-22. The budget calendar is ongoing throughout the year. During the course of the year, budget updates are provided at board workshops, and monitoring is performed through budget analyses and forecasts. In the spring, we typically have a better idea of what the legislative budget is providing for us, whether we can expect an increase or decrease of state funds. Budget steering committee meetings are held during this time frame, primarily for capital outlay requests. In July and September, we hold 2 public hearings regarding the budget and millage. As mentioned earlier, the first hearing was held on July 27th. Tonight is the second of those hearings. Certain parameters guide the building of the budget. We strive to and have been able to maintain a 63-37 ratio. This means at least 63% of all expenses are for direct instruction or in the classroom, and 37% are related to other areas such as instructional support, plan operations, and administration. In short, at least 2/3 of all funding goes toward expenditures in the classroom. We are required by statute to maintain a minimum 3% contingency, while district policy states we're to maintain a minimum 5% contingency. This budget projects our contingency to be at least 7% at the end of the 2021-22 fiscal year. We also budget so as to support our core curriculum and strategic directions. The majority of our budget is in our general fund. This year, it's proposed to be approximately $1 billion. The second largest funding source is capital outlay at $375 million. The district's self-insured health fund is anticipated to be approximately $161 million and represents the district's third largest fund. The total proposed budget for all funds this year is approximately $1.7 billion. Looking at the budget summary for all revenue sources, you see that about 60% of the total budget comes from the general fund. Capital outlay accounts for almost 23%. The combined total of these 2 funds comprises approximately 83% of our entire budget. The new year brings several legislative changes. The base student allocation, or BSA, increased to $4,372.91. This is an increase of $53.42, or 1.24% over last year's BSA. Statewide, funding decreased by $103 million, or $16.7 million to Pinellas due to decreased student enrollments during the pandemic. A reserve of $464 million for returning students has been put in place at the state level. Changes in the Florida retirement system contribution rate are projected to increase district expenditures by $4 million. Total operating fund resources are anticipated to be approximately $1 billion. Of that, about $518 million comes from local sources, which includes the half-mil referendum. Nearly $337 million comes from state sources. The Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP, is the general fund's primary funding source. The FEFP funding formula utilizes a combination of state and local resources to fund education. Looking at the operating revenue budget graphically, you'll note that local sources represent about 52% of the total operating budget, and state sources account for nearly 34%. The remaining 14% comes from transfers and fund balance. The operating budget is used to fund the day-to-day operating expenditures of the district. It pays for salaries and benefits, supplies and materials, textbooks, student transportation, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. Viewing the distribution of our operating budget by object, there's little change from previous years. About 61% of our budget is spent on salaries and 22% on benefits. In total, approximately 83% of our operating budget goes towards staffing. Capital outlay funds include revenue from both state and local sources. This fund reflects the revenue and expenditures for construction and renovation of school buildings and grounds. The majority of these funds are generated by the local capital improvement millage, which is set by law and limited to 1.5 mils. No PICO funds are expected this year for traditional district schools. Additional funds have been provided through Certificate of Participation, or COPS bonds. The lease purchase financing of capital improvements through the issuance of COPS bonds is a technique frequently utilized by Florida school districts to finance school facilities. Our proposed capital outlay budget is approximately $375 million. The budget reflects $164 million in new revenue and $338 million in proposed appropriations. The special revenue budget is comprised of two major categories of federal funds: contracted programs and food service. The total contracted programs budget is approximately $57 million. This budget starts the year off low and builds as the year goes on, as we don't typically recognize the revenue until it is available. Included in this category are the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Act and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act grants. These grants are also referred to as ESSER and CARES. Food service is a self-sustaining fund as it receives no financial support from the operating fund. Federal reimbursements and local collections are the primary revenue sources. The proposed food service budget is approximately $54 million. The debt service fund is used to account for the payment of general long-term debt principal and interest. This nearly $8 million budget represents the debt service for COPS bonds issued by the district. Previous debt associated with State Board of Education bonds issued by the state of Florida on the district's behalf in February of 2000 was fully satisfied in the 2020-21 fiscal year. The proposed self-insured workers' compensation and liability budget of $2.1 million accounts for the premium revenue and expenditures associated with the district's self-insured workers' compensation and liability insurance programs. The self-insured health fund accounts for the district's premium revenue and claim expenditures with a budget of approximately $161 million. The proposed budget and all supporting documents are on file in the Office of Budget and Resource Allocation. This information can also be found online. At this point, I'll turn the meeting back to the board chair to allow for public comment and the motions necessary to adopt the proposed budget. Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, the form that people were asked to fill out just said budget hearing. So we had two people sign up, so I'm going to find out whether Ashley Green wants to also speak to this portion of it. Or Mr. Clutho, would you like to speak to this? I got it. Would you like to speak to this portion?
Of course.
All righty. Then we will welcome you to the podium.
Mark Clutho, Largo. Yeah, look at these figures here. $3,100,000 for the school board. Outrageous. And then you have school administration, $64 million. Facilities acquisition and construction, $257,700,000. Well, you know, I have gone through all of these headlines and what happens when you make those stupid, dumb buildings belching the carbon into the atmosphere. The future's dim. $79,700,000 for operation of plant, maintenance of plant. $20 million, $8,700,000 for debt service. And the superintendent's using that word that's entirely inappropriate, strategic. No. Not in any way related to this budget. Not even close. When you're talking about over $250 million for the facilities that new building up there at Clearwater High School, not oriented correctly. Brand new building. You don't acknowledge the science. That building where my wife taught at Mildred Helms, that was supposed to be a prototype. A complete joke. The future's very dim. Very, very dim, and this budget is malfeasance.
All right, that's all of the speakers, all right? Then I will entertain a motion to approve the final budget. Dr. Carr?
I move that the board approve the final 2021-22 budget as presented.
All right, do we have a second? Second. All right, Ms. Hine. Any discussion? Got it. All righty, so we have a motion and a second to approve the final 2021-22 budget as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. And it passes unanimously. Our next one is going to be adoption of the resolution determining revenues and millage levied. Do we have a motion? Ms. Hines?
I move that the board adopt required resolution as presented without formal reading.
All right, is there a second? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the required resolution as presented without a formal reading. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. And it passes unanimously. All right, do we have any other consideration from the board? And do we have any closing comments from anyone? All righty, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your assistance this evening.